Captain Jake Morrison stood in the center of the Great Hall on Zentara Prime. The walls reached up so high he could barely see the ceiling. Giant creatures from dozens of worlds sat in floating chairs around him. Their eyes, some glowing, some black as space, all stared down at him with cold judgment. The largest creature was Chancellor Vextar, his snake-like body coiled around a crystal throne that pulsed with blue light. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. "Human," Vextar hissed. "Your species has committed crimes against the peace of our galaxy. You have used violence when words should have solved problems. You have attacked when you should have talked. The Galactic Council finds humanity guilty of being too aggressive." Jake kept his face calm. He had expected this moment for months. Behind him stood Admiral Lisa Carter and General Ryan Woods, the other members of Earth's delegation. In the observation area above, he could see the faces of human diplomats and reporters watching their trial. The charges were simple. Pirates had been attacking human cargo ships for 2 years. They destroyed entire colonies and killed thousands of people. When the human military finally fought back and destroyed the pirate bases, the council called it excessive force. They said humans should have asked for help instead of fighting. Jake remembered the burned cities on New Colorado. He remembered the families who died waiting for the council to act. The council had done nothing for 2 years except hold meetings and write reports while people died. "The council has made its decision," announced a creature that looked like a walking tree. "Humanity will be exiled from all Inner Rim territories. You have 30 days to remove all human settlements, military bases, and trade stations. After that time, any human found in Inner Rim space will be arrested." The hall filled with clicking and buzzing sounds as the alien representatives showed their approval. Jake felt his anger rising but kept it hidden. General Wood stepped forward, his military medals catching the strange light of the chamber. "This is a mistake," Wood said firmly. "We only defended ourselves and our people. The pirates you're protecting killed innocent families." Chancellor Vextar's eyes narrowed to slits. "The Galactic Council does not make mistakes, human. Your species thinks violence is the answer to every problem. We have maintained peace in this galaxy for 3,000 years. We will not let you destroy that peace." Admiral Carter spoke next. Her voice was steady and professional. "What about our trade agreements? Our research partnerships? Millions of humans live in the Inner Rim. Where are they supposed to go?" "That is not our concern," replied a floating jellyfish-like creature. "You have 30 days. Use them wisely." The trial was over. No more arguments would be heard. Jake looked up at the towering aliens one last time. He memorized their faces, their voices, their smug confidence. They thought they were punishing a small, weak species that would beg for mercy. They had no idea what they had just done. As the human delegation left the chamber, Jake walked beside Admiral Carter. "They think they're sending us away to die in the Outer Rim," he said quietly. "Maybe they are," Carter replied. "The Outer Rim is supposed to be empty space and dead worlds. No resources, no colonies, nothing worth having." General Woods overheard them. "Then they don't know humans very well. We've survived ice ages and world wars. We've turned deserts into gardens and empty space into highways. If they want to throw us into the wilderness, fine. We'll make it our home." Back on Earth, President Kate Sullivan stood before the largest crowd in human history. The news of the exile had spread across every human world in hours. Millions of people filled the streets of major cities, watching giant screens as their leader spoke. "My fellow humans," Sullivan began. "Today the Galactic Council has chosen to exile our entire species from the Inner Rim. They call us too violent, too aggressive, too dangerous for their peaceful galaxy." The crowd booed and shouted angry words. Sullivan raised her hand for silence. "They are wrong about us being dangerous to peace, but they are right about one thing. We are dangerous to those who harm innocent people. We are dangerous to bullies and tyrants. We are dangerous to anyone who thinks they can push us around." She paused and looked directly into the camera. "The Council believes they are punishing us by sending us to the Outer Rim. They think those empty regions of space will be our prison. But they have given us something much more valuable than they realize. They have given us freedom. The cheering started slowly but grew louder and louder until it shook buildings across the planet. Over the next few days, the evacuation began, but it wasn't the desperate flight the Council expected. Human ships moved in organized patterns carrying not just people, but entire factories, research labs, and military equipment. Dr. Alex Turner led teams of scientists who packed up advanced technology and loaded it onto colony ships. Engineer Megan Brooks supervised the loading of construction robots and manufacturing equipment. The Council had given humanity 30 days to leave. They expected to see scared refugees running away with whatever they could carry. Instead, they watched as humanity conducted the largest organized migration in galactic history. Commander Steve Adams stood on the bridge of the colony ship New Horizon as it prepared to jump to hyperspace. Around him, hundreds of other ships formed a massive convoy heading toward the outer rim. In the cargo holds were thousands of families, but also weapons, tools, and machines that could build new worlds. "Sir," called out the navigation officer, "we're ready to jump." Adams looked at the display showing the inner rim for the last time. Somewhere back there, the Council members were probably celebrating their victory over the violent humans. They thought they had solved their problem by throwing humanity into the darkness beyond civilized space. "Jump," Adams ordered. The stars shifted, and humanity headed toward exile. But exile, they were about to discover, could be another word for opportunity. The Council had given them an entire region of space with no rules, no oversight, and no one to tell them what they could or could not do. It was exactly what humanity needed. 6 months had passed since the human ships entered the outer rim. The reality was much harder than anyone had expected. Governor Helen Price stood on the observation deck of New Haven Colony, watching another dust storm tear across the barren landscape. The red planet beneath her feet was supposed to be their new home, but it felt more like a prison. "The air recyclers are failing again," reported Security Chief Danny Ross as he joined her at the window. "We've got maybe 2 weeks of clean air left if we can't fix them." Helen nodded grimly. They had landed on 17 different worlds in the past months, and each one brought new problems. Some planets had poisonous air that killed within minutes. Others had gravity so strong it crushed human bones. The few worlds that seemed safe turned out to have hidden dangers that only appeared after people started dying. "Any word from the supply ships?" Helen asked. "Nothing," Danny replied. "The Council has made sure no one from the inner rim will trade with us. We're completely cut off." 300 miles away, Dr. Amy Foster was learning just how cut off they really were. Her research team had been studying the strange energy readings coming from underground when the attack happened. Metal creatures the size of cars had burst from the ground, their weapons firing beams of light that melted rock. "Everyone back to the shuttles!" Dr. Foster shouted as her team ran for their lives. Behind them, more mechanical monsters emerged from hidden tunnels. The creatures moved with deadly purpose, as if they had been waiting for humans to arrive. Security Chief Danny Ross arrived with a rescue team just in time. His soldiers fought the metal creatures with plasma rifles, but their weapons barely scratched the strange machines. Only when they reached the shuttles and lifted off did the creatures stop chasing them. "What were those things?" asked Ross as they flew back to the colony. "I don't know," Dr. Foster replied, looking at the readings on her scanner. "But they're not natural. Someone built them. Someone who didn't want visitors." Far from New Haven, Captain Ben Taylor was making his own disturbing discovery. His exploration ship Wanderer had been mapping empty space between star systems when they found something impossible. A massive ship, dark and silent, drifted alone in the void. "It's huge," whispered engineer Carol Hayes as they approached the alien vessel. "Bigger than anything the Council ever built." The ship was ancient, covered in strange symbols that hurt to look at. There were no signs of life, no energy readings, nothing to suggest anyone was still aboard. But when Carol's boarding team entered through a breach in the hull, they found wonders that made their hands shake. "Captain," Carol's voice crackled over the radio, "you need to see this. The technology here is incredible. These computers are still working after thousands of years." The power systems are based on principles we've never seen before. Nick Ward, the team's codebreaker, was already working on the alien computers. I'm getting some data, he reported. References to something called the Forgotten War. And there are weapon designs here that make our best military hardware look like toys. Captain Taylor felt excitement and fear in equal measure. This technology could save humanity, but it also raised terrible questions. Who had built this ship? What had happened to them? And why was their advanced vessel floating dead in space? Back on New Haven Colony, Administrator Kevin Clark was dealing with more immediate problems. The long-range sensors had detected ships approaching the outer rim. Not human ships. These were sleek, predatory vessels that moved like hunters. Pirates, Governor Helen Price said when she saw the sensor readings. They're coming to see if the stories are true, if humanity really has been abandoned out here with no protection. The pirate fleet arrived 3 days later. 20 ships surrounded the human colony, their weapons trained on the small settlement. A transmission came through on all frequencies, the alien voice rough and mocking. Greetings, exiled humans. I am Krexhan, Lord of the Crimson Fleet. Your council friends have told everyone in the galaxy that you are alone now. No protection, no help, no hope. Governor Helen Price answered the transmission personally. This is Governor Price of New Haven Colony. State your business. The alien laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Business? My business is simple. You will pay tribute to my fleet. Food, supplies, technology, whatever you have of value. Pay and we might let you live. Refuse. And we will take everything anyway after we kill half of you as an example. We have nothing to give you, Helen replied. We're barely surviving ourselves. Then you will die, Krexhan snarled. But not quickly. We will broadcast your destruction across the galaxy. Let everyone see what happens to species that anger the Council. The transmission ended, leaving the colonists in terrified silence. They had no military ships, no weapons capable of fighting a pirate fleet. The few security officers like Danny Ross were brave, but 20 armed ships against a small colony was hopeless. Word of the pirate threat spread quickly to other human settlements across the outer rim. On the industrial world of Hope Station, General Ryan Woods received the news with cold anger. He had been organizing humanity's scattered military forces, but the process was slow and difficult. How long before they attack? Woods asked his aide. Krexhan is giving them 1 week to consider his offer, came the reply. Woods looked at the star chart showing human colonies scattered across the outer rim. They were weak, divided, and defenseless. The pirates knew it, the Council knew it, and worst of all, the humans themselves were starting to believe it. Send a message to Admiral Carter, Woods ordered. Tell her it's time to stop running and start fighting. On the mining station, Deep Rock, Admiral Lisa Carter received the message while reviewing reports from across human space. Every colony was struggling. Equipment broke down with no spare parts available. Food supplies were running low. Medical supplies were almost gone. The Council's exile was working exactly as planned, but Carter also saw something else in the reports. Humans were adapting. They were learning to fix machines with salvaged parts. They were growing food in impossible conditions. They were finding ways to survive that no other species had ever tried. The pirates think we're weak, Carter said to her staff. The Council thinks we're defeated. Maybe it's time to show them both what humans do when we're pushed into a corner. Captain Jake Morrison arrived at Admiral Carter's station 2 days later. His ship carried the first good news humanity had received in months. Dr. Alex Turner and his research team had made breakthrough discoveries using the technology from the ancient derelict ship. We can adapt their weapons to our ships, Dr. Turner explained excitedly. Their power systems are compatible with human technology. We can build things the Council has never seen before. Morrison looked at the weapon designs on Turner's computer screen. They were unlike anything in galactic civilization. Instead of the long-range energy beams favored by Council species, these were designed for close combat. Brutal, efficient, and terrifying. How long do we have? Morrison asked. Krexhan's deadline is in 4 days, Admiral Carter replied. Morrison smiled for the first time since the exile began. Then we better get to work. It's time to teach the galaxy a lesson about underestimating humans. The Outer Rim was about to discover that exile could transform victims into something much more dangerous. The Council had thrown humanity into the wilderness expecting them to die quietly. Instead, they were about to create their worst nightmare. The human fleet moved through space like silent death. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the battleship UES Defiance, watching the pirate stronghold grow larger on the main screen. Titan's Rest looked like a metal spider wrapped around a giant asteroid, its weapon platforms glowing with ready power. "They don't know we're coming," reported the sensor officer. "Their scanners can't detect our new stealth systems." Morrison nodded. Dr. Alex Turner's team had worked miracles in the past week, combining human technology with the ancient alien systems they had discovered. The result was ships that moved like ghosts through space, invisible to normal sensors. Behind him, Admiral Lisa Carter studied the tactical display. 20 pirate ships in dock, plus the station defenses. Krexhan's entire fleet is here. "Perfect," Morrison said grimly. "We end this problem all at once." The attack began without warning. Human ships dropped their stealth fields and opened fire at point-blank range. The pirates had expected long-range energy battles like every other species in the galaxy. Instead, the humans closed to knife-fighting distance and used weapons that tore ships apart from the inside. Engineer Megan Brooks had designed the new human weapons based on ancient technology. Instead of clean energy beams, they fired projectiles that punched through armor and exploded inside enemy ships. The pirates' shields designed to stop energy weapons were useless against solid metal moving at incredible speed. "First wave is down," reported Colonel Tim Roberts from his boarding ship, moving to assault the station. This was the part that terrified other species. Humans didn't just destroy enemy ships from a distance. They boarded them. They fought hand-to-hand in the corridors. They took prisoners and captured technology instead of simply blowing everything up. The pirate station's defenders had never faced human soldiers in close combat. Colonel Roberts led his Marines through the station's narrow passages, using tactics that no galactic military had ever developed. They moved in small teams, used explosives to create new doorways, and fought with a savagery that made the pirates panic. Krexhan himself was captured alive in his command center, surrounded by dead bodyguards in the wreckage of his control systems. The pirate lord looked at Colonel Roberts with something like respect mixed with terror. "What are you?" Krexhan asked in his broken human speech. "We're what happens when you threaten our families," Roberts replied simply. The battle for Titans. Rest lasted only 6 hours. When it was over, the entire pirate fleet was either destroyed or captured. More importantly, the humans had sent a message across the Outer Rim. They were no longer helpless refugees. Back on New Haven Colony, Governor Helen Price received reports of the victory with mixed feelings. They had won, but at a cost. The human military was becoming something harder and more violent than anything she had seen before. "The other pirate fleets are already running," Security Chief Danny Ross reported. "Word is spreading that humans fight differently than anyone else." "How many of our people did we lose?" Price asked. 12 killed, 30 wounded, Ross replied. "Against a force 5 times our size." Price shook her head in amazement. No galactic military had ever achieved such results with so few losses. But she wondered what humanity was becoming in the process. Dr. Amy Foster was asking the same question as she studied the captured pirate technology. Her team had found something disturbing in the pirates' computers. The attacks on human colonies hadn't been random raids. They had been coordinated by someone else, someone with access to Council intelligence networks. The pirates knew exactly where our weakest colonies were located, Dr. Foster explained to Admiral Carter. They knew our supply routes, our defense, capabilities, everything. Someone with high-level Council access was feeding them information. Carter felt cold anger building in her chest. The Council wasn't just exiling us. They were making sure we would be destroyed out here. "It gets worse," Dr. Foster continued. "The pirates have similar arrangements with other species that oppose the Council. This isn't just about us. It's about eliminating anyone who won't." Submit to Council authority. Meanwhile, Commander Steve Adams was leading exploration fleets deeper into the Outer Rim, discovering that the region was far from empty. Ancient ruins covered dozens of worlds, filled with technology that made Council science look primitive. More importantly, they found other species hiding in the darkness, refugees from Council oppression who had fled to the Outer Rim generations ago. The first to make contact were the Kethrun, a species of small, intelligent creatures who looked like walking lizards. Their leader, Ambassador Teaksh, approached the humans cautiously. "We have watched your battles with the pirates," Teaksh said in careful human speech. "We are impressed. No one has stood against the Council's agents so successfully." Captain Lucy Mitchell, commanding the industrial ship New Geneva, negotiated humanity's first independent trade agreement. The Kethrun offered rare metals in exchange for human protection and technology. It was a small deal, but it proved that humanity could survive economically without the Council. Dr. Turner's research team made another breakthrough when they discovered that the ancient ruins weren't just archaeological sites. Many of them contained active defense systems that responded to human commands. The aliens who built them had programmed their technology to recognize certain genetic patterns, and humans apparently matched those patterns. "It's like they were waiting for us," Turner explained to General Ryan Woods. "The weapons activate when humans touch them. The computers accept human neural interfaces. It's almost as if we're related to the builders somehow." Woods studied the data with growing excitement. If the ancient defense systems could be reactivated, humanity would have fortifications that no Council fleet could break. The Outer Rim could become an impregnable fortress. On the mining world of Hope Station, engineer Carol Hayes was working on an even more ambitious project. Using captured pirate ships and ancient technology, her teams were building something that had never existed before: human warships designed specifically for the Outer Rim environment. The new ships were smaller than traditional galactic vessels but faster and more maneuverable. They carried weapons that could punch through any known armor and shields that could absorb incredible amounts of damage. Most importantly, they were designed to operate far from supply bases, with manufacturing facilities built into the ships themselves. "We're not just adapting to the Outer Rim," Hayes explained to Captain Morrison. "We're becoming masters of it." The transformation was happening across human space. Colonies that had been struggling to survive 6 months ago were now thriving industrial centers. Humanity had learned to extract resources from the harshest environments and turn worthless worlds into strongholds. More alien species began approaching the humans for protection and trade. The insectoid Vrixtal brought biotechnology that could grow food in toxic soil. The energy beings called Lumra offered power generation systems that worked on dead worlds. Each new alliance made humanity stronger, but the real change was in humanity itself. The exile had stripped away the comfortable assumptions of civilization. Humans had learned to fight not just for victory, but for survival. They had become something that the galaxy had never seen before, a species that grew stronger when pushed to the edge of destruction. Admiral Carter stood in the command center of the newly completed Armstrong base, a massive space station built from the wreckage of dozens of pirate ships. Around her, officers from 6 different species worked together planning the defense of the Outer Rim. "The Council still thinks we're beaten," Carter said to her staff. "They believe their exile worked exactly as planned." Captain Morrison joined her at the tactical display showing the entire Outer Rim. What had once been empty space was now filled with human colonies, allied species, and defensive installations that could stop any invasion. "Let them keep thinking that," Morrison replied. "It will make the surprise even greater when they finally realize what they've created." The Outer Rim was no longer humanity's prison. It had become their kingdom. And kingdoms, as the Council was about to learn, had a tendency to expand. 2 years after the exile, President Kate Sullivan stood before a crowd unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humans, Kethrun, Vrixtal, Lumra, and dozens of other species filled the Great Assembly Hall on Armstrong Base. Today marked the official founding of the Outer Rim Confederation, a new government that would challenge everything the Galactic Council represented. "We gather not as conquerors or rebels," Sullivan announced, "but as free beings who choose cooperation over submission. The Council rules through fear and force, "We will build something better," Admiral Lisa Carter watched from the military section, her uniform now bearing the insignia of the Confederate Navy. Around her sat officers from 20 different species, all united by their rejection of Council authority. The Navy had grown from a handful of human ships to a force of over 3,000 vessels, many incorporating technology that made Council fleets look primitive. In the asteroid field surrounding Armstrong Base, General Ryan Woods commanded the largest military construction project in galactic history. Thousands of workers from dozens of species labored to complete defensive installations that could protect the entire outer rim. The asteroid belt itself had been turned into a fortress, with weapons platforms hidden inside every large rock. "Sir," reported Captain Jake Morrison, now commanding the entire Confederate Marine Corps, "the final pirate stronghold at Black Rock has agreed to surrender. They're asking for terms." Woods smiled grimly. The campaign to eliminate pirate presence in the Outer Rim had taken 18 months, but it was finally complete. The last holdouts had realized that fighting the Confederation was suicide. Better to surrender and hope for mercy than face the fate of those who had continued to resist. The assault on Black Rock had demonstrated how far human military doctrine had evolved. Instead of the massive fleet battles favored by galactic powers, Colonel Tim Roberts had led a precision strike directly into the fortress. Dropships had delivered Marines into the heart of the enemy stronghold, while orbital bombardment from ships equipped with ancient weapons had destroyed the outer defenses. "What kind of terms are they asking for?" Woods asked. "Full pardons for any pirate who agrees to join the Confederate forces," Morrison replied. "They want to switch sides completely." "Grant it," Woods decided. "We can use experienced pilots, and it sends a message to anyone else thinking about opposing us." Far from the military planning, Dr. Amy Foster was making discoveries that would change everything. Deep beneath the surface of Haven Colony, her archaeological team had found something that made her hands shake as she read the ancient records. The builders weren't just another extinct species, Dr. Foster explained to Dr. Alex Turner as they stood in the newly discovered facility. They were the original inhabitants of this galaxy. Every species currently in the Council territories are actually invaders who arrived thousands of years ago. Turner studied the holographic displays that showed the ancient galactic map. "You're saying the Council species wiped out the original inhabitants?" "Not just wiped out," Foster replied. "Systematically exterminated them to steal their worlds and technology. The genocide was so complete that they even rewrote history to make it seem like they had always been here. The implications were staggering. If this information became public, it would destroy the Council's claim to legitimate authority. Every species in their territory would realize they were living under the descendants of murderers and thieves." Meanwhile, Commander Steve Adams was discovering that the Outer Rim held even more secrets. His exploration fleets had found intact ancient cities on worlds the Council had declared barren and worthless. These weren't ruins, but functioning facilities with technology that responded to human presence. The defensive systems are incredible. Engineer Carol Hayes reported from the planet they had named New Terra. Planetary shields that can stop any weapon the Council possesses. Manufacturing systems that can build ships in days instead of months. The ancients built this region as a fortress. Back on Armstrong Base, Governor Helen Price now served as the Confederation's civilian administrator, overseeing the integration of dozens of alien species into human society. The process was not always smooth, but it was working better than anyone had expected. "The Chardon refugees have completed their journey from Council space," reported Administrator Kevin Clark. "They're requesting permission to establish a crystal garden on the moon of Haven." "Approved," Price replied. "Their energy manipulation technology will be invaluable for our industrial development." The Chardon were only the latest species to flee Council oppression and seek protection in the Outer Rim. Word was spreading across the galaxy that the Confederation offered something the Council never had: genuine freedom and equality for all member species. Dr. Turner's team had achieved another breakthrough by fully integrating ancient technology with human engineering. The result was weapons and ships that surpassed anything in the known galaxy. More importantly, they had learned to mass-produce the technology, giving the Confederation a decisive military advantage. Captain Lucy Mitchell commanded the industrial ship New Geneva, which had grown into a mobile factory capable of building entire fleets. Her crews worked around the clock, turning raw materials into the tools of war in progress. The Confederation's industrial capacity now exceeded that of most Council worlds. But the real transformation was happening at the individual level. Humans who had been farmers and merchants 2 years ago were now fleet commanders and planetary governors. The exile had forced humanity to adapt and grow in ways they never could have imagined under Council rule. Security Chief Danny Ross, now commanding Confederate intelligence, brought troubling news to the leadership meeting. Council spies have been attempting to infiltrate our colonies. They're trying to gather information about our military capabilities. Let them look, Admiral Carter replied confidently. They won't understand what they're seeing until it's too late. The truth was that the Confederation had moved beyond anything the Council could comprehend. Their technology was alien, their tactics were unprecedented, and their unity was based on shared values rather than enforced submission. Ambassador Claire Murphy had established diplomatic relations with over 50 species, many of whom were secretly providing intelligence about Council activities. The network of informants and allies stretched across the galaxy, giving the Confederation advance warning of Council plans and intentions. On the research station orbiting New Terra, technician Sue Davis was working with systems analyst Greg Miller to decode the final secrets of the ancient computers. What they found changed everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. The genetic markers are a perfect match, Davis reported excitedly. Humans aren't just compatible with ancient technology. We're descendants of the builders themselves. The revelation explained everything. Why human neural patterns activated ancient systems. Why the defensive installations recognized human commands. Why the technology seemed designed for human use. Humanity hadn't stumbled into the outer rim by accident. They had come home. Geologist Sam Torres confirmed the findings with evidence from dozens of worlds. The mineral compositions, the atmospheric, processing systems, even the orbital mechanics of these planets show signs of human-compatible terraforming from thousands of years ago. As the second anniversary of the exile approached, Chancellor Vextar himself arrived at the edge of Confederate space with a Council fleet of impressive size. His message was broadcast across the outer rim on all frequencies. Humans and their allies. Vextar's voice hissed with barely controlled rage. You have violated the terms of your exile by establishing military forces and making alliances with our subjects. The Council demands immediate submission to reintegration under stricter terms. President Sullivan responded from the Assembly Hall of Armstrong Base with representatives of 50 allied species standing behind her. Her answer was broadcast across the galaxy. Chancellor Vextar, we are no longer your subjects to command. The Outer Rim Confederation is a sovereign government representing free species who have chosen their own destiny. We reject your authority and your demands. The transmission ended, leaving both sides preparing for what everyone knew was inevitable. The Council had never accepted defiance from subject species. The Confederation had grown too strong to submit to Council authority. War was coming, and it would determine the future of the galaxy. The truth hit the galaxy like a bomb. Dr. Alex Turner's complete analysis of the ancient records was broadcast from every Confederate transmission station across known space. The evidence was undeniable. The current Galactic Council species had not evolved in these territories. They were invaders who had committed genocide against the original inhabitants thousands of years ago. President Kate Sullivan stood in the Confederate Assembly Hall as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. On 17 Council worlds, Subject I, species were rising in rebellion. The carefully maintained peace of 3,000 years was crumbling, as species after species realized they had been living under the descendants of mass murderers. The Council is losing control, reported Ambassador Claire Murphy. Their own subject species are demanding answers about the genocide. Some are declaring independence and asking to join the Confederation. Chancellor Vextar's response was swift and brutal. Instead of answering questions about the ancient war, He declared martial law across Council space and began moving the largest fleet in galactic history toward the Outer Rim. 3,000 ships, representing the combined military might of dozens of worlds, formed up for what Vextar promised would be the final destruction of human defiance. Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the command center of Armstrong Base, studying the tactical displays that showed the approaching Council fleet. Around her, officers from 20 different species worked frantically to coordinate the defense of the Outer Rim. "They're using traditional formation patterns," observed Captain Jake Morrison. "Long-range energy weapons, massive battle lines, everything by the book." "Good," Carter replied grimly. "They still don't understand what they're facing." General Ryan Woods activated the trap that had been 2 years in the making. Across the Outer Rim, the ancient defensive systems that Dr. Amy Foster's team had discovered came online. Planets that the Council thought were worthless rocks suddenly bristled with weapon batteries that had been hidden for millennia. The Council fleet entered the Outer Rim expecting to face a handful of human ships and their primitive allies. Instead, they found themselves attacked by entire star systems. Asteroids revealed hidden missile launchers. Dead planets opened fire with weapons that cut through Council shields like paper. Space stations that had seemed abandoned suddenly came alive with defensive systems beyond anything in galactic civilization. Chancellor Vextar watched in horror as his carefully planned invasion turned into chaos. "What is this?" he demanded, as his command ship shook under bombardment from weapons that shouldn't exist. "This is what happens when you underestimate humans," replied Captain Morrison over the communication channel. The Confederate fleet had appeared seemingly from nowhere, using stealth technology and tactics that made the Council forces look clumsy and outdated. The battle was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The Council relied on long-range energy exchanges and massive formations that had dominated warfare for thousands of years. The Confederates used close-range weapons, boarding actions, and coordinated attacks with the ancient defense systems that turned the Outer Rim into a deadly maze. Engineer Megan Brooks watched from the bridge of the UES Defiance as human ships tore through Council battle lines. The ancient weapons, fully integrated with human technology, proved devastatingly effective against the enemy's energy shields and armor. "Their shields are designed for energy weapons," Brooks reported. "Our projectile systems are going through them like they're not even there." But the real devastation came from the tactics that no galactic military had ever faced. Human Marines, led by Colonel Tim Roberts, boarded Council ships in the middle of battle. Instead of simply destroying enemy vessels, they captured them, turning the Council's own ships against their former allies. The psychological effect was overwhelming. Council crews who had trained for clean, distant battles found themselves fighting humans in their own corridors. The savage efficiency of human close combat tactics broke the morale of entire fleets. Within hours, Vextar's invasion force was in full retreat. But Commander Steve Adams was already executing the next phase of the Confederate plan. Using captured Council ships and their access codes, Adams led a strike force directly toward the Council's capital world of Zentara Prime. "The main Council fleet is trapped in the Outer Rim," Adams reported as his ships jumped to hyperspace. "Zentara Prime is defended by only a handful of garrison vessels." The strike on the Council capital was swift and surgical. Security Chief Danny Ross led Special Forces teams that seized the Council chambers, while the few defending ships were overwhelmed by ancient weapons they couldn't understand or counter. Chancellor Vextar was captured in his own throne room, surrounded by the bodies of his guards and the wreckage of his power. He stared at Commander Adams with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. "This is impossible," Vextar hissed. "We have ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years. You are nothing but exiled criminals. We're the rightful heirs to this galaxy," Adams replied coldly, "and you're the criminals who stole it from us." The broadcast that followed changed everything. From the Council's own transmission networks, the ancient records were shown to every world in the galaxy. The evidence of genocide, the proof of stolen territory, the revelation that the current Council species were invaders who had rewritten history to hide their crimes. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Species after species declared independence from the Council. Some begged to join the Confederation, others simply threw out their Council governors, and established their own governments. The galactic order that had existed for millennia collapsed. Within days, Dr. Amy Foster stood in the ruins of the council chambers, studying the ancient symbols carved into the walls. They built their government on top of the original builder's capital, she explained to President Sullivan. They were literally sitting on the evidence of their own crimes for thousands of years. 6 months later, the Treaty of New Geneva was signed in the same assembly hall where the Confederation had been founded. Over 200 species sent representatives to establish the Free Galactic Alliance, a new form of government based on voluntary cooperation rather than enforced submission. President Sullivan, now representing the alliance, established principles that were revolutionary in galactic politics. No species would be forced to join. No world would be ruled by distant powers. Trade and cooperation would be freely chosen, not imposed by military force. The few council loyalists who remained retreated to heavily fortified core worlds, their authority reduced to a handful of systems. Most of their former subjects wanted nothing to do with the old order, having learned the truth about their rulers' bloody origins. Admiral Carter stood on the observation deck of Armstrong Base, now the capital of the Free Galactic Alliance. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see ships from hundreds of different worlds arriving for the first Free Galactic Congress. Captain Morrison joined her, looking out at the incredible sight of former enemies working together. "Hard to believe it's only been 3 years since the exile," he commented. "They thought they were punishing us," Carter replied, echoing Morrison's words from the beginning of their journey. "Instead, they gave us exactly what we needed to free the entire galaxy." The transformation was complete. Humanity had gone from exiled criminals to liberators of galactic civilization. The Outer Rim had become the center of a new kind of government that offered hope instead of oppression. But perhaps most importantly, the truth had finally been revealed. The galaxy belonged to its people, not to the descendants of ancient conquerors. The age of the Council was over. The age of freedom had begun. Engineer Carol Hayes approached the two officers with a final report. "The last Council stronghold has agreed to negotiate. They're asking for terms." Morrison and Carter exchanged glances. After everything that had happened, after all the suffering and fighting, the moment of final victory had arrived quietly. "Tell them we'll discuss terms," Carter decided. "But they'll be our terms, not theirs." The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had kept their promise to show the stars what they became when pushed too far. The result was not conquest, but liberation. Not empire, but freedom. The exile was over. The real journey was just beginning.